Let the modern world fade away. Take a deep breath, slow and easy, and for a moment, allow the weight of your day, the soft hum of your room, the small steady glow of your screen, the long list of things you carried through the hours to slip quietly into the background, until there is only darkness and the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Now imagine a different breath. 66 million years ago, on a bright spring morning over the warm, shallow seas of the southern Caribbean, a single shape is moving across the upper atmosphere. The shape is bright, pale, growing brighter. It is moving at over 40,000 miles per hour. It is 6 to 9 miles across. It is the asteroid that, in your world, ended the age of dinosaurs. In your world, 66 million years ago it struck. The fireball bloomed across half the sky. The shockwave flattened forests across thousands of miles. The ejector rained back through the atmosphere as a hailstorm of glowing fragments, heating the air to oven temperatures. The wildfires burned across every continent. The impact winter dropped global temperatures by 30 degrees Fahrenheit. The food chains collapsed. The dinosaurs starved. The mosasaurs went. The pterosaurs went. The ammonites went. 75% of all species on Earth went extinct. The small mammals living in the shadow of the great dinosaurs survived, came through the impact winter in their burrows and tree hollows, and began the slow, patient 66 million year inheritance that would eventually produce the modern world, the modern mammals, the modern primates, and eventually you. But tonight in this walk, we are not in that timeline. Tonight the asteroid is moving across the upper atmosphere at over 40,000 miles per hour, just as it did in your world. The fireball is growing in the southern sky. The Cretaceous animals across the planet are going about their ordinary morning. The Triceratops are grazing in their Hell Creek floodplains. The Tyrannosaurus are stalking through the conifer groves. The hadrosaur herds are moving across the marshes. The mosasaurs are cruising the western interior seaway. The pterosaurs are gliding over the warm coastal waters. And in this timeline, in this quiet alternate version of the same morning, the asteroid passes overhead. Just overhead, by a margin of perhaps 1 million miles. The trajectories of orbital mechanics are precise but unforgiving. A small difference in the initial orbital geometry, a slightly different gravitational nudge from Jupiter many years earlier, a marginally different position of the asteroid in its long elliptical journey through the inner solar system, and the asteroid that should have struck the Yucatan misses the Earth entirely. It crosses the upper atmosphere as a bright transient fireball, leaves a glowing trail across the southern sky, and continues into the dark space beyond. The Cretaceous animals look up at the strange bright light for a few seconds, then return to their morning grazing. They do not understand what they have just been spared from. The asteroid passes, it returns to the dark space between the planets. It will, in its own slow elliptical orbit, eventually fall into the sun in a few million years, or be ejected from the solar system by a distant gravitational interaction, or be captured into a different orbit somewhere else in the outer solar system. Its fate is not important. What is important is that the impact did not happen. We are going to stay with the near miss for a long, quiet moment. The moment deserves to be honoured slowly. We rise into the upper atmosphere over the southern Caribbean, 66 million years ago, on the bright spring morning we have already glimpsed. The Earth below us is the late Maastrichtian Earth. The shallow Yucatan Sea is calm and blue-green in the morning light. The coastlines of what will become Mexico and Central America are low and forested. The Cretaceous animals are about their ordinary morning. We rise higher. The atmosphere thins. The blue of the sky deepens toward black. We are now in the upper mesosphere, perhaps 40 miles above the surface. We can see the curvature of the Earth clearly. The shallow Caribbean below us is bright. The coastlines are crisp. The whole hemisphere of the planet is visible in long, slow perspective. We rise higher still. We are in the thermosphere, then in low space itself. The Earth is a blue and green and white sphere below us, hanging in the dark. We can see very clearly now the bright pale streak moving across the southern part of the sky, approaching the Earth from a southerly direction at a shallow angle. The streak is the asteroid. In your timeline, the asteroid is on a collision trajectory. It will, in approximately 35 seconds from this moment, intersect the Earth's upper atmosphere at over 40,000 miles per hour. The fireball will bloom, the shockwave will radiate, the impact winter will begin, the Mesozoic will end. In our alternate timeline, the asteroid is on a near-miss trajectory. The orbital geometry is just slightly different. The asteroid passes perhaps 1,000,000 miles closer to the Earth than its natural trajectory would have brought it, but 1,000,000 miles is still 1,000,000 miles. The Earth's gravity well bends the asteroid's path slightly, accelerates it briefly, but does not capture it. The asteroid passes overhead, glowing brightly as it crosses through the upper atmosphere in a long, shallow trajectory, and continues into the dark space beyond. We watch it happen. The bright streak grows brighter. The asteroid, now perhaps 500 miles above the Earth's surface, is heating to incandescence from the friction of the thin upper atmosphere. Even at this altitude, the air is dense enough to ablate the surface of the asteroid, vaporizing small particles of rock that trail behind it in a luminous tail. The streak across the sky is now bright enough to be visible from anywhere on the daylight side of the Earth. The asteroid passes its closest approach. At its nearest, it is perhaps 200 miles above the Earth's surface, crossing the upper edge of the thermosphere. The friction heating is intense. The asteroid is now glowing white-hot, its surface temperature thousands of degrees, its luminous tail trailing thousands of miles behind it across the sky. The dinosaurs see it. Across the entire daylight hemisphere, late Cretaceous animals look up at the bright streak in the sky. The Triceratops grazing in the Hell Creek floodplain stops chewing, raises her great head, watches the streak for a long, quiet moment. The Tyrannosaurus moving through the conifer grove pauses, scans the sky, dismisses the strange light as not relevant to his hunt. The Edmontosaurus herd in the marsh briefly mills in confusion, then settles back into its grazing rhythm. The Quetzalcoatlus gliding overhead is, for a moment, illuminated from below by the bright reflected light of the asteroid trail. The mosasaur cruising the western interior seaway notices the bright surface light through the warm, shallow water, then continues her hunt. The pterosaurs in the air are perhaps the most affected. They can see the bright streak more clearly than the surface animals can. A few of them, startled by the strange brightness, fold their wings and drop into protective glides toward the ground. Most of them simply continue their flights, treating the bright streak as no more relevant than a sudden flash of distant lightning. The asteroid passes. It crosses the daylight sky and disappears over the eastern horizon, continuing on its trajectory into the dark space beyond Earth. The luminous tail fades over the next several minutes. The thin contrail of vaporized rock dust gradually disperses into the upper atmosphere, where it will produce for the next several years slightly more colourful sunsets across the alternate Earth as the dust slowly settles through the atmosphere. That is all. The fireball does not bloom, the shockwave does not radiate, the wildfires do not ignite, the impact winter does not begin, the dinosaurs do not die, 3/4 of all species on Earth do not go extinct, the Mesozoic does not end, the alternate timeline has begun. Take a deep breath. The moment of divergence is small. It is, in the long perspective of orbital mechanics, almost nothing. 1,000,000 miles is a comically small difference at the scale of the solar system, where the planets orbit at hundreds of millions of miles from the Sun, and where small asteroid orbits can vary by tens of millions of miles across their long elliptical paths. 1,000,000 miles is, in cosmic terms, a hair's breadth. But that hair's breadth, in this alternate timeline, has spared the dinosaurs. The whole 66 million years of subsequent mammalian evolution, the entire Cenozoic, the rise of the primates, the emergence of humans, the development of civilization, all of these things are downstream of the asteroid having hit in our timeline In the alternate timeline where it missed, none of these things happen. The world we know simply does not develop. The world that develops instead is something else entirely. We watch the alternate dinosaurs continue their mourning. The Triceratops returns to her grazing. The Tyrannosaurus continues his hunt. The Edmontosaurus herd settles back into its feeding rhythm. The pterosaurs glide, the mosasaurs cruise. The flowering plants continue their slow, patient evolution. Nothing in the world has changed, from the perspective of the animals living through it. The bright streak in the sky was strange, but it has passed. The morning continues, the day will continue, the seasons will continue, the years will continue, the slow, patient, deep time will continue. In the alternate timeline, the late Cretaceous simply goes on. We lift away from the moment of the near miss. The Earth below us continues to spin in its orbit. The asteroid continues into the dark space beyond. We move forward in time, slowly, into the alternate history Cenozoic that is just beginning to unfold. The dinosaurs continue. Take a deep breath. Settle. Tonight, we're going to walk slowly through the 66 million years of alternate Earth history that follows. We're going to imagine, gently and honestly, what the world might have looked like if the Mesozoic had not ended at the KPG boundary. We're going to walk through a Cenozoic that never happened, a timeline in which the great dinosaur lineages continued. The small mammals remained small, the primates never emerged, and the modern world of your own century was inhabited by descendants of the late Cretaceous fauna. This is a thought experiment. We hold it lightly. We're not pretending that this is what would have happened. Evolution is contingent. Small differences ripple into vastly different outcomes. The actual evolutionary trajectory of dinosaur lineages without the KPG extinction is fundamentally unknowable. We can only sketch a plausible feeling alternate history, anchored in what we know about Mesozoic biology, climate change, and continental drift, but acknowledging at every step that the picture is imagination woven gently into a framework of inference. What we can say with some confidence is that the dinosaur lineages freed from the catastrophe that ended them in your timeline would have continued to evolve across the next 66 million years. The slow climatic shifts of the Cenozoic would still have happened. Continental drift continues regardless of any extinction event. The slow cooling of the planet would still have happened. The angiosperm radiation would have continued. The flowering plants would have spread further. The grasslands, when they appeared, would have transformed terrestrial ecosystems, whether mammals were there to graze them or whether ornithopods were. The dinosaurs would have responded to all of these changes. They would have evolved new lineages, lost old ones, adapted to new climates, new plant communities, new ecological pressures. They would have continued the slow, patient evolutionary work that they had been doing for the previous 170 million years. By the time the alternate history equivalent of your modern century arrived, the dinosaur faunas would be substantially different from the late Cretaceous fauna that survived the near miss. But they would still be dinosaur faunas. The mammals would still be small, hidden, marginal. The world would be theirs. Tonight, in our walk, we're going to visit that world, gently and slowly, across many overlapping time frames. We're going to begin at the moment of the near miss, 66 million years ago. We're going to walk forward in time, stage by stage, until we arrive at the modern alternate Earth. We're going to look around. We're going to honour what might have been. This is a long walk. 66 million years is more time than any single night can really cover. We will take the slow path, lingering on the moments that feel most worth lingering on. We will move at the pace of slow wind across a Cretaceous floodplain. So let the modern world fade away. Settle into whatever supports you. Breathe out slowly. Let the day go. There is no urgency tonight. The asteroid has missed. The dinosaurs are walking. The walk is at the pace of slow, patient, deep time. If your eyes close along the way, that is perfectly all right. The world will still be here, breathing in long, slow waves when you return. We begin in the first quiet hours after the near miss. The fireball has crossed the sky and faded. The dinosaurs that looked up at it have lowered their heads and returned to their ordinary morning. The Triceratops matriarch in her Hell Creek floodplain is grazing on ferns. The Tyrannosaurus is moving through the conifer groves, hunting. The Edmontosaurus herd in the marsh is feeding in long, slow lines. The pterosaur Quetzalcoatlus is gliding overhead. The mosasaur Mosasaurus is cruising the warm, shallow waters of what remains of the Western Interior Seaway. They do not know what they have been spared from. They do not understand the alternate timeline that has just diverged. They do not feel the absence of the catastrophe. They simply continue. Take a deep breath. Watch them for a long, quiet moment. The late Cretaceous world is intact. The great dinosaurs are at the peak of their long radiation. The marine reptiles are at their peak. The pterosaurs are at their greatest sizes. The flowering plants are spreading across the continents. The first true birds are diversifying in the canopies. The small mammals are in their leaf litter hunting beetles. Across the entire planet in this first quiet morning after the near miss, life continues as it has continued for the past few million years of late Maastrichtian time. The Triceratops continues to graze, the Tyrannosaurus continues to hunt, the pterosaurs continue to glide, the mosasaurs continue to cruise. Nothing has changed. We move forward in time slowly. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. The late Cretaceous world continues. The dinosaur faunas continue. The mammal faunas continue, small and marginal and almost invisible. The plant communities continue to evolve at their slow, patient pace. By the time we have moved forward 10,000 years, the alternate history Hell Creek fauna is essentially unchanged from the moment of the near miss. We're going to walk slowly through a specific moment in the alternate Cenozoic, around 50 million years before the modern present, when the planet is still in the warm greenhouse phase that characterized the early Cenozoic in our timeline. In the alternate timeline, this is 16 million years after the near miss. The Cretaceous fauna has had time to evolve in new directions, but the basic dinosaur dominance is still recognizable. We arrive on a wide, warm coastal floodplain on what will become the western coast of North America. The landscape is broadly familiar from late Cretaceous walks. Slow rivers winding across alluvial plains, conifer groves clustering in higher patches of ground, scattered angiosperm trees beginning to dominate in some regions, ferns and cycads still abundant. The climate is warm, humid, semi-tropical even at this temperate latitude. The polar regions are not yet glaciated. Sea levels are still high. The dinosaur fauna walking across this alternate history floodplain is different from the late Maastrichtian fauna we know from the Hell Creek Formation. 16 million years of additional evolution has reshaped the species composition. The dominant herbivores are now larger ceratopsian descendants. The Triceratops lineage has continued to diversify across the 16 million years since the near miss, producing several distinct genera. The largest of them is a ceratopsian we can imagine called something like Megaceratops, perhaps 35 feet long, weighing perhaps 10 tons, with a greatly reduced frill, no longer needed for the intense intraspecific combat that drove frill evolution in the late Cretaceous, but with greatly elongated nasal horns that have evolved into a forward-projecting weapon for both defense and territorial display. A small herd of these alternate history Megaceratops is moving slowly across the floodplain. There are perhaps 12 animals, walking in a loose family group with the matriarch leading, and the juveniles tucked between the adults. They're calm, patient, browsing on the abundant low cycads and ferns as they walk. The hadrosaur lineage has also continued to evolve. The Edmontosaurus and related Cretaceous hadrosaurs have given rise to several new lineages, each adapted to slightly different ecological roles. The dominant hadrosaur of this alternate history floodplain is a hadrosaur descendant we can imagine called something like Camposaurus. A more lightly built, faster-moving hadrosaur, perhaps 20 feet long, evolved for life as a fast migratory grazer of the early developing grasslands. A large herd of Cretaceous is grazing in a distant patch of more open ground. There are perhaps 200 animals, moving in long lines, occasionally lifting their heads to scan for predators, occasionally calling to each other in low rumbling voices that carry across the open ground. They are the alternate history equivalent of the wildebeest of your modern East Africa, although they are dinosaurs, not mammals, and they are evolved across 16 million years from late Cretaceous hadrosaur ancestors, rather than from the Cretaceous surviving mammals that produced the actual modern antelopes. The apex predators of this alternate Eocene equivalent floodplain are tyrannosaur descendants. The Tyrannosaurus rex lineage of the late Maastrichtian has, across the 16 million years, diversified into multiple species occupying different size niches. The largest is a tyrannosaur descendant we can imagine called something like Reginati perhaps 40 feet long, weighing perhaps 9 tons, slightly larger than the original T-Rex, and adapted for hunting the larger ceratopsian descendants that now dominate the herbivore biomass. A smaller tyrannosaur descendant, perhaps 20 feet long, has emerged as a specialist predator of the faster hadrosaur descendants like Camposaurus, evolved for pursuit hunting rather than the ambush hunting of his larger cousin. We see one of these smaller tyrannosaurs now, moving through the conifer grove at the edge of the floodplain. He is fast, agile, his body proportions lighter than the great T-Rex of his ancestral lineage. His arms are longer than the famously tiny arms of his Cretaceous ancestor, perhaps as a response to selection for active hunting maneuvering. His feathers, more extensive than those of his Cretaceous ancestor, provide better insulation in the slightly cooler climate of the alternate Eocene. He is watching the Camposaurus herd. He is patient. He will not attack the main herd. The animals are too alert. He is looking for an isolated individual, perhaps an old or sick animal that has fallen behind the main group. He is, in his ecological role, very similar to a modern lion stalking a wildebeest herd in your East Africa. He hunts the same way. He has, evolved across the alternate 16 million years, converged on similar predatory behaviors as the actual mammalian predators in our timeline. The smaller dinosaurs of the alternate floodplain include various ornithopod descendants, smaller theropod descendants, and the small feathered theropods that have continued to occupy the chicken to fox size range. The dromaeosaur lineage, which we have already mentioned, has diversified considerably. The largest dromaeosaur descendants are perhaps the size of small wolves, hunting in cooperative packs. The smaller dromaeosaur descendants are perhaps the size of foxes or small cats. The mammals are still here. They are small. They occupy the ecological niches that small mammals occupy in our timeline's tropical floodplains. Insectivorous, omnivorous, mostly nocturnal, hidden. There may be slightly more diversity than in the late Cretaceous. Some new lineages have appeared as the climate has cooled and as new ecological pressures have favoured small generalists, but they remain firmly marginal. The largest mammal in this alternate Eocene floodplain is perhaps the size of a modern rat. Most are smaller. None occupy any of the large body niches that would, in our timeline, be filled by the actual Eocene mammals, the early ungulates, the early carnivores, the early primates. We watch the alternate Eocene equivalent floodplain for a long quiet moment. The Megaceratops herd browses slowly. The Camposaurus herd grazes in the distance. The Reginati is somewhere out of sight, perhaps resting in a shaded grove during the warm midday heat. The smaller tyrannosaur is stalking the Camposaurus. The small mammals are in their hiding places, waiting for evening to begin their nightly hunts. This is the alternate Earth, 16 million years after the near miss. The dinosaur faunas have continued to evolve. The mammals have remained small. The world continues, recognizably an alternate version of the late Cretaceous template, but visibly different from the moment of the near miss. We continue forward in time. 10,000 years is, in deep time terms, almost nothing. The dinosaur species are the same. The dominant predators are still the same Tyrannosaurus lineage. The dominant herbivores are still the same Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, and Ankylosaurus. The flowering plants are still spreading at the same patient pace. We move forward another 100,000 years. The Cretaceous fauna is still mostly recognizable. There are some small evolutionary shifts. Some species have gone extinct through ordinary processes. Every species eventually does. Other species have appeared as descendants of earlier forms. The overall ecosystem structure is unchanged. We move forward another million years. Now, there are real changes. The slow climate cooling that was already underway in the late Maastrichtian has continued. Some lineages that were specialists of the warmer late Maastrichtian have declined. New lineages have appeared that are better adapted to the slightly cooler conditions. The Triceratops we knew has been replaced by a slightly different ceratopsian descendant, slightly modified in horn arrangement and body size. The Tyrannosaurus lineage continues, but with new species emerging across the North American continent. We are now, in alternate history terms, around 65 million years before your modern present. In your timeline, this period is the early Paleocene, the first epoch of the Cenozoic. The mammals are radiating into the empty niches left by the dinosaur extinction. The first archaic mammal lineages are appearing. The first archaic primates are emerging in the warmer tropical regions. In our alternate timeline, none of this is happening. There is no Paleocene as a meaningful evolutionary phase. The Cretaceous simply continues. The dinosaur faunas continue. The mammals remain small and marginal. The primates do not appear. We continue forward in time. Across the next 10 million years, the alternate history Earth experiences the same slow climate cooling, the same continental drift, the same plant community changes that the real Cenozoic experienced. The continents continue their slow drift. The Atlantic continues to widen. India continues her long northward journey toward eventual collision with Asia. The flowering plants continue to diversify. The first true grasses appear, around the same time they appeared in our timeline, but the dinosaur faunas respond to these changes in dinosaur-shaped ways. They continue to occupy the large body niches. They continue to dominate the terrestrial ecosystems. They evolve new lineages adapted to cooler climates, to new plant communities, to new geographies. The hadrosaur lineage, which had been the dominant bulk plant eaters of the late Cretaceous, continues to thrive and diversify. New hadrosaur species appear, occupying ecological roles that in our timeline would be filled by horses and deer and antelopes. The hadrosaurs become the great migratory herd animals of the alternate Earth, moving in vast herds across the continents in seasonal migrations following the plant communities. The ceratopsian lineage, the Triceratops family, also continues to diversify. New ceratopsian species evolve, occupying ecological roles that in our timeline would be filled by rhinoceros and elephants. The great horned ceratopsians become the bulk grazers of the alternate Earth's developing grasslands. The tyrannosaur lineage continues. New tyrannosaur species evolve to hunt the changing herbivore faunas. They remain the apex predators of the alternate Earth terrestrial ecosystems for tens of millions of years. The smaller theropod lineages also continue. The dromaeosaurs, the troodontids, the ornithomimids, the small, fast-feathered theropods of the late Cretaceous all continue to diversify. Some of them, in the alternate timeline, may evolve towards smaller body niches that in our timeline are occupied by small carnivorous mammals, foxes, weasels, civets. The dromaeosaurs in particular, with their intelligence and their feathered insulation, would be plausible candidates for evolving into something like small, clever pack-hunting predators across the alternate history grasslands. The pterosaurs continue. The great Quetzalcoatlus lineage continues to occupy the giant land glider niche. Smaller pterosaur lineages continue to occupy the various aerial, fish-eating, insectivorous and other specialized roles. The pterosaurs may, across the alternate Cenozoic, evolve some lineages we would not recognize from any modern animal. Large land-walking predator pterosaurs perhaps, or small specialized canopy-dwelling pterosaurs, or strange long-necked filter-feeding pterosaurs over the warmer alternate Earth shallow seas. The marine reptile lineages continue. The mosasaurs, which were just reaching their peak in the late Cretaceous, continue to diversify. new mosasaur species evolved to occupy new marine niches. The mosasaurs may, across the alternate Cenozoic, eventually take ecological roles that in our timeline are occupied by cetaceans, large pursuit predators like our killer whales, or filter feeders like our baleen whales, or deep-diving squid hunters like our sperm whales. The mosasaur lineage in the alternate timeline could plausibly produce something approaching the modern whale lineage in body size and ecological role, but as marine reptiles rather than marine mammals. The plesiosaurs continue. The long-necked plesiosaur lineage, which had been declining somewhat in the late Cretaceous, may experience a renaissance in the alternate Cenozoic, occupying ecological niches that the modern long-necked seabirds and the modern dolphins fill in our timeline. The ammonites continue. The great coiled-shelled cephalopods, which had been one of the great success stories of the Mesozoic seas for nearly 400 million years, would not have gone extinct at the KPG boundary. They would have continued to occupy the warm, shallow sea ecosystems across the alternate Cenozoic, diversifying into new forms in response to new ecological pressures. We continue forward in time. Across the next 20 million years, the alternate history Earth experiences the same slow climate cooling that the real Cenozoic experienced. The polar regions cool. The first hints of polar ice begin to appear in the high latitudes. The sea levels begin to fall. The dinosaurs respond. New polar adapted dinosaur lineages emerge, descended from the polar Cretaceous dinosaur populations we have walked with in other episodes. These polar dinosaurs evolve thicker insulating feathers, larger fat reserves, more sophisticated cold weather behavioral adaptations. The alternate history Arctic supports a complete polar dinosaur ecosystem, with adapted hadrosaur herds migrating across the tundra in seasonal cycles, polar tyrannosaur predators hunting them, smaller polar theropods filling the smaller predator niches. The alternate history Antarctic is similarly populated. The Antarctic landmass, which in the alternate timeline still supports forests rather than ice sheets. The slow cooling has not yet glaciated the polar regions to the same degree as in our timeline, is home to a southern hemisphere dinosaur fauna distinct from the northern fauna. The Australian Antarctic landmass has its own characteristic dinosaur species, separated from the rest of the world by the Southern Ocean. We continue forward. By around 40 million years before your modern present, in alternate history terms, the planet has cooled significantly. The first proper polar ice caps may be forming in the alternate Antarctica, although they are smaller than the ice caps in our timeline because the alternate history continents are slightly differently arranged. The broken Atlantic and Pacific circulation patterns differ in some details. The grasslands have spread across the temperate latitudes. The dinosaur faunas have transformed. The late Cretaceous fauna is, by this point, only distantly recognizable in the alternate history descendants. New lineages dominate. The ceratopsian descendants are now massive grassland grazers, perhaps the size of modern elephants, moving in vast herds across the continental interiors. The hadrosaur descendants are leaner, faster, more migratory, occupying ecological roles broadly similar to modern antelopes and zebras. The tyrannosaur descendants have diversified into multiple species at different size classes, with the largest still hunting the great ceratopsian descendant grazers, and smaller relatives hunting smaller prey. The small mammals are still here. They have continued to live their small, careful lives in the shadows of the dinosaur faunas. They have not radiated into the empty niches that allowed them to dominate the real Cenozoic. They remain small, mostly nocturnal, mostly insectivorous, mostly invisible. We are going to walk forward to another specific moment in the alternate Cenozoic, around 25 million years before the modern present. In our timeline, this is the Oligocene-Miocene boundary, the period when the first true grasslands appeared and began to transform terrestrial ecosystems worldwide. The grasses had evolved earlier, perhaps in the late Cretaceous or early Cenozoic, but the great spread of grasslands as a continent-scale biome happened in the Miocene. In the alternate timeline, the grasses still appear at the same evolutionary time. The plant evolution is largely independent of which animals are dominating the terrestrial ecosystems. the grasslands still spread across the temperate latitudes during the alternate Miocene equivalent. The transformation of terrestrial ecosystems still happens, but the animals responding to the grasslands are different. We arrive on what will become the Central Eurasian steppe, around 25 million years before the modern present. The landscape is wide and open. The grass extends to the horizon, broken only by scattered, isolated stands of trees and by the long lines of meandering rivers. The climate is temperate. The seasons are pronounced: hot, dry summers, cold winters with some snow in the higher latitudes. In our timeline, this period saw the explosive radiation of the modern grazing mammals. The horses, the antelopes, the camels, the bison, the early elephants, all of them appeared and diversified rapidly in response to the new ecological opportunity of the grasslands. The grazing mammal radiation of the Miocene is one of the great evolutionary stories of the entire Cenozoic. In the alternate timeline, there are no grazing mammals to radiate. The mammals are still small. The grasslands, when they appear, are immediately occupied by dinosaur lineages that adapt to the new ecological opportunity. The hadrosaur descendants we have already met have continued to evolve. The hadrosaur lineage was, in the late Cretaceous, already evolved for bulk plant consumption, with the extraordinary dental batteries that allowed efficient processing of tough fibrous plant material. The hadrosaurs were, in a sense, pre-adapted for grassland grazing. They had the teeth, the digestive physiology, the social herd behavior, the migratory capacity. When the alternate history grasslands appeared, the hadrosaur lineage was ready. The alternate Miocene equivalent grasslands of Central Eurasia are dominated by descendants of the late Cretaceous hadrosaur lineage. The most successful is a hadrosaur descendant we can imagine called something like Camposaurus, the grassland hadrosaur. He is perhaps 25 feet long, weighing perhaps 3 tons, evolved for fast running across the open grasslands. His teeth are even more elaborately specialized for grass cutting than his Cretaceous ancestors' teeth were. His digestive system has evolved to handle the high silica content of grass, which is hard on the teeth of any grazing animal. His social behavior has evolved into the great migratory herd patterns characteristic of grassland herbivores everywhere. A vast herd of Camposaurus is moving across the alternate Miocene equivalent steppe in the warm afternoon light. There are perhaps 8,000 animals in the herd, the largest herbivore aggregation we have walked with anywhere in our nights together. They are moving in long lines, perhaps 10 miles long, walking from one part of the steppe to another in the seasonal migration patterns that they follow across the year. They are calm, patient, alert. The matriarchs at the front of the lines lead the herd. The bulls walk at the perimeter, watching for predators. The calves are tucked in the middle, sheltered by the adults. This herd is the alternate history equivalent of the great American buffalo herds of the early 19th century, or the great wildebeest herds of the modern Serengeti, or the great caribou herds of the modern Alaskan and Canadian Arctic. The herd structure, the migratory pattern, the alertness, the social behavior, all are recognizably similar to the great grassland mammal herds of our timeline. They are convergent evolutionary outcomes, the same ecological role being filled by different lineages. The predators of this alternate history grassland are tyrannosaur descendants, as they were in the alternate Eocene equivalent floodplain. But the tyrannosaur lineage has continued to evolve. The grassland tyrannosaur of this alternate Miocene is a different animal from his Eocene equivalent ancestor. He's smaller, faster, more lightly built. He hunts in cooperative packs of 3 to 7 animals, similar to the way modern lions hunt. He has evolved long legs for high-speed pursuit hunting across the open grasslands. A pack of 7 of these alternate grassland tyrannosaurs is watching the Camposaurus herd from the cover of a small isolated stand of trees. They are conserving energy in the warm afternoon, waiting for the cooler evening hours when hunting will be easier. They are silent, alert, communicating with each other in subtle body language and occasional low calls. They are, in their hunting behavior, very similar to modern African lion prides watching modern wildebeest herds. The ceratopsian descendants are also present in this alternate grassland, although in different ecological roles than they occupy in the alternate Eocene equivalent floodplain. The grassland ceratopsians have evolved into something more like modern rhinoceros than modern elephants. Solitary or small group browsers and grazers, with reduced frills but enlarged nasal and brow horns for defense against the larger pack-hunting tyrannosaur descendants. They are large, slow, well-armored, dangerous when threatened. They occupy the heavy bulldozer niche of the alternate grassland ecosystem. The smaller dinosaurs of the alternate grassland include the running ornithomimid descendants, which have continued to evolve into fast cursorial forms, broadly similar to modern emus or ostriches. The dromaeosaur descendants are present as smaller pack predators, hunting the smaller herbivores and the juvenile larger ones. The small feathered theropods occupy the small carnivore niches. The pterosaurs are still present in the alternate grassland sky. The Quetzalcoatlus lineage, which have been giant land-stalking predators in the late Cretaceous, has continued to evolve. Some lineages have continued in the giant body size, perhaps even larger than the original Quetzalcoatlus, soaring on the warm thermals of the alternate grassland and occupying ecological roles similar to modern giant condors or modern marabou storks, scavengers of large carcasses, occasional opportunistic predators of smaller prey. We watch the alternate Miocene equivalent grassland for a long quiet moment. The Camposaurus herd continues its slow, patient migration. The tyrannosaur pack continues to wait in the shade. The ceratopsian bulldozers are visible at the edges of the herd, browsing in their own slow, patient way. The pterosaur giants are circling on the warm thermals overhead, watching the scene from above. This is the alternate world at the equivalent of our Miocene. The grasslands have transformed the terrestrial ecosystems, just as they did in our timeline. The animals occupying the grasslands are descendants of late Cretaceous dinosaur lineages, rather than descendants of Cretaceous surviving mammals. But the ecological structure, great migratory herbivore herds, pack-hunting apex predators, scavengers in the sky, is convergent with our timeline. Evolution finds similar solutions to similar ecological problems, regardless of which lineages are doing the evolving. We continue forward in time. There are perhaps slightly more mammal species in the alternate Cenozoic than there were in the late Cretaceous, because some marginal niches have opened up as the climate cools and as new ecological pressures favour small generalists. But the mammals remain marginal. They do not produce large body forms. They do not produce primates. They do not, in any timeline that includes the surviving dinosaurs, produce humans. Before we go any further, settle in. If this slow, calm way of wandering through an alternate deep time helps you loosen your grip on the day, you're welcome to follow or subscribe wherever you are listening, on Spotify, on YouTube, or in your podcast app of choice. Only if this kind of careful storytelling soothes you. There is no urgency. The decision can be as unhurried as a hadrosaur herd settling into its grassland, evening 50 million years from a near-miss asteroid. For now, let your breath slow. The alternate dinosaurs are walking, the walk continues. We continue forward in time. By around 20 million years before your modern present, in alternate history terms, the planet has cooled further. The polar ice caps are now substantial. The sea levels have fallen significantly. The grasslands have spread across most of the temperate latitudes. The forests have retreated to wetter regions and to higher latitudes. The alternate history dinosaur faunas have continued to evolve. The grassland fauna is now dominated by the descendants of the ceratopsians and hadrosaurs, with multiple species at different size classes, filling roles broadly analogous to modern grassland mammals. The forest fauna is dominated by mid-sized hadrosaur descendants and by feathered theropod descendants, with the smaller theropods occupying roles broadly analogous to modern forest carnivores. The polar regions have their own characteristic dinosaur faunas. The Arctic supports a small population of hardy polar dinosaurs, adapted to the long polar winters with thick insulating feathers and slow metabolic adjustments. The Antarctic, where the climate has cooled enough to support seasonal ice in some regions, has its own polar dinosaur ecosystem. The flying animals of the alternate Cenozoic are interesting. In our timeline, the birds radiated to fill all of the aerial ecological niches after the pterosaurs went extinct. In the alternate timeline, both birds and pterosaurs survive. They compete for the aerial niches. The competitive dynamic is uncertain, but a plausible outcome is that the birds dominate the smaller fast-flying niches, where their lighter bones and more efficient flight muscles give them an advantage, and the pterosaurs dominate the larger soaring niches, where their unique wing structure and lighter overall mass give them an advantage. The alternate history skies might be home to a richer aerial fauna than the real Cenozoic, with both bird and pterosaur lineages present. The marine reptiles continue. The mosasaur lineage has diversified across the alternate Cenozoic into multiple body plans and ecological roles. The largest mosasaur descendants may be approaching the size of modern blue whales, although built differently. The smaller mosasaur lineages have specialized into various pursuit predator and ambush predator roles. The plesiosaurs are also abundant, with long-necked species hunting fish in the open water and shorter-necked species occupying coastal pursuit niches. The cetaceans, in our timeline, evolved from small terrestrial mammals that took to the sea in the early Cenozoic, around 50 million years before our modern present. In the alternate timeline, with the marine reptile lineages still occupying the large marine predator niches, the cetaceans never evolve. The small terrestrial mammals never have the opportunity to take to the seas, because the seas are already full of large reptilian predators. The whales, the dolphins, the porpoises, all of our modern marine mammal lineages simply never exist. We continue forward. By around 10 million years before your modern present, in alternate history terms, the planet has cooled to nearly its modern temperature range. The polar ice caps are large, the grasslands are extensive, the forests are concentrated in wetter regions. The climate is, in broad terms, recognizably similar to your modern world. The dinosaur faunas at this point are radically different from the late Cretaceous starting point 66 million years earlier. The lineages have continued to evolve, new body plans have emerged, some Cretaceous lineages have gone extinct entirely through ordinary processes, others have given rise to whole new family-level diversities. The dinosaurs of this alternate 10 million years ago Earth would be unrecognizable to anyone who only knew the late Cretaceous fauna. We can imagine, gently and tentatively, what some of these alternate history dinosaurs might look like. We're going to settle for a long, quiet moment in the alternate modern East African savanna. We're going to spend time with a single individual alternate history dinosaur in a single day of his alternate history life. This is the heart of the thought experiment, the moment when the alternate timeline becomes intimate rather than abstract. We arrive on a wide alternate history savanna in what would be eastern Kenya, in the alternate history equivalent of your modern present. The morning is just breaking. The eastern sky is pale orange. The grass is wet with overnight dew. The air is cool, with the day's heat still building. In the middle distance, a small group of dinosaurs is rising from their sleeping positions. They are the alternate history descendants of the ceratopsian lineage, modified across 66 million years from their late Cretaceous Triceratops ancestors into a new form adapted to the alternate East African savanna. We will call this animal, for the sake of our walk together, Savannaceratops. He is the lead bull of his small family group. He is perhaps 25 feet long, weighing perhaps 4 tons. His body is broad and barrel-shaped, evolved for efficient grass digestion. His legs are columnar, evolved for slow, patient walking across the open savanna over long distances. His head is large but not as massive as the heads of his Cretaceous ancestors. The great frill of Triceratops has been substantially reduced in the alternate evolutionary line, no longer needed for the same intense intraspecific combat. His 3 horns are still present, but smaller than the horns of his Cretaceous ancestor, more for visual display and ritual combat than for serious fighting. His skin is patterned in a complex pattern of dark grey on the back and lighter beige on the belly, with darker stripes running vertically along his flanks. The pattern is a modern adaptation, camouflage for the dappled light of the savanna. Acacia stands where his herd often rests during the heat of the day. He has spent the night sleeping with his family group. His mate, a smaller adult female, 3 juveniles of various ages, a yearling, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old subadult, and 1 elderly female, his mother, who is now perhaps 35 years old, near the end of her natural lifespan. They have been sleeping in a small protected hollow at the base of a single tall baobab tree, the largest tree visible for several miles around the open savanna. He raises his head, sniffs the cool morning air, looks around. There are no immediate threats. The night was uneventful. His family group is intact. He stands. His family follows. The matriarch, his mother, is slightly slower to rise. Her joints are old, and the cool morning is harder on her than on the younger animals. But she stands eventually and joins the family group. The Savannaceratops family begins to walk slowly toward the river that flows perhaps a mile away. They drink in the early morning. They have followed this same daily pattern for years. The lead bull knows the territory perfectly. The matriarch has known it for her entire life. We walk with them. The savanna is wide and bright in the morning light. The grass is dotted with scattered acacia trees, very similar to the acacia trees you would find on the modern East African savanna. The plant evolution in the alternate timeline has produced many of the same plant species, because the plants are largely independent of which animals are dominating the ecosystem. The grasslands are still grasslands, the acacias are still acacias, the flowering plants are still flowering. The plant community is recognizable, but the animals are different. As we walk with the Savannaceratops family, we see other alternate history dinosaurs in the morning light. A herd of hadrosaur descendants is grazing in a wider open patch of ground, perhaps half a mile from us. There are perhaps 300 of them, moving in long lines, their dental batteries working steadily on the tough grass. They are the alternate history equivalent of the great wildebeest herds of modern Serengeti. They are wary, they look up frequently. They have lived for many generations under the threat of the alternate history predators. The predators are not far away. A pack of 5 alternate history tyrannosaur descendants is visible at the edge of the herd, resting in the shade of an acacia stand. They have already hunted this morning. We can see the remains of a hadrosaur kill perhaps a quarter mile from where they are resting. They have eaten well and will not hunt again until evening. The hadrosaur herd is for now safe. The Savannaceratops family continues toward the river. The lead bull keeps the pack of tyrannosaurs in his peripheral vision at all times, but he is not concerned. The pack has fed and is resting. They will not threaten his family group while they are full and at rest. In the air overhead, the alternate history sky is full of life. Several large pterosaur descendants are gliding on the warm morning thermals, perhaps 20-foot wingspans, soaring slowly in wide, patient circles as they watch the savanna for opportunities to scavenge. A flock of smaller flying creatures, descendants of the late Cretaceous neorniths, the true bird lineage that survived in our timeline and continues in the alternate timeline alongside the surviving pterosaurs, is moving in a coordinated formation toward a distant tree, perhaps heading to a roosting site or to a feeding ground. The smaller animals of the savanna are also visible if we look carefully. Small theropod descendants slip between the acacia stands, hunting insects and small lizards in the morning light. They are perhaps the size of large modern roadrunners, feathered, fast, intelligent. They are the alternate history equivalent of the small grassland predators of our timeline. The mammals are present too, but they are mostly invisible at this hour, mostly burrowing rodent-like forms that come out only at night to hunt insects in the cool darkness. We arrive at the river with the Savannaceratops family. The river is broad and shallow at this point, with sandbars and reed banks, flowing slowly between low banks of red soil. The water is the colour of weak tea, similar in appearance to many modern East African rivers. The Savannaceratops family wades into the shallow water. They drink. They walk slowly through the cool water, washing the night's dust from their hides. The juveniles play in the shallows, splashing each other with their broad feet. The lead bull stands in deeper water, drinking long and slow. We watch them for a long, quiet moment. This is a day in the life of an alternate history dinosaur family. It is, in its rhythms and its details, very similar to the daily life of a modern East African elephant family in your own world. The same morning awakening, the same walk to the river, the same drinking and play and slow patient movement across the savanna, the same predator vigilance, the same family social structure with a lead bull and a matriarch and juveniles. It is the alternate history convergent equivalent of mammalian elephant biology, evolved across 66 million years from a completely different starting point, but arriving at remarkably similar ecological solutions. The lead bull finishes drinking. He raises his head, water dripping from his lower jaw, and looks across the river toward the further bank. He listens. He sniffs. He is checking for predators on the other side. There are none today. He calls to his family in a low rumbling voice. They gather around him. They will spend the day grazing in the open savanna, resting through the heat of the day in the shade of acacia stands, and returning to a sleeping hollow as evening approaches. Tomorrow morning, they will repeat the cycle. They will repeat it every day for as long as they live. This is their world. This is their life. This is the alternate Earth, in the alternate equivalent of your modern moment. There are no humans to watch them. There are no naturalists to film them. There are no scientists to study them. There are no philosophers to wonder about the contingent evolutionary trajectory that produced them. They are alive, and they are real in this alternate timeline, and they are unwitnessed. We watch them here in your imagination tonight. We honor them. They will continue in our imagination on their alternate Earth for as long as you wish to hold them. The Savannaceratops family will walk across the alternate African savanna. The hadrosaur herds will graze on the alternate Eurasian steppe. The tyrannosaur descendants will hunt in the alternate forests. The pterosaur giants will glide over the alternate skies. The mammals will remain small and hidden. The alternate world is paused in your mind, intact and alive and beautiful and unwitnessed. The largest grassland grazers might be ceratopsian descendants the size of small elephants, with greatly reduced frills and horns, no longer needed for the same combat purposes as their late Cretaceous ancestors, but with greatly elongated muscular trunks, evolved as flexible feeding appendages, allowing them to graze efficiently without lowering their entire heads to the ground. Their bodies are barrel-shaped, their legs columnar, their movements slow and patient. They live in herds of perhaps 100 animals, moving across the vast grasslands of the alternate Eurasian interior. The medium-sized grazers might be hadrosaur descendants, lighter and more agile than the great ceratopsian-derived elephant analogues, moving in vast migratory herds across the open plains. They have evolved long legs for fast running, sharp, keen vision for predator detection, complex social behaviors for herd coordination. They are the alternate history wildebeest, the alternate history zebra, the alternate history saiga antelope. They are the bulk biomass of the alternate history grassland herbivore community. The apex predators of the alternate history grasslands might be tyrannosaur descendants, smaller and faster than their late Cretaceous ancestors but still formidable. They have evolved longer legs for pursuit hunting, reduced forelimbs even smaller than the famously tiny arms of Tyrannosaurus rex, and sophisticated cooperative hunting behaviors. They are the alternate history lions, the alternate history hyenas, the alternate history cheetahs. They are the dominant grassland predators. In the forests, the smaller theropod lineages have continued to evolve. The dromaeosaur descendants have perhaps evolved into multiple species at different size classes, with the largest occupying ecological roles similar to modern jaguars and the smaller occupying roles similar to modern foxes. They are feathered, intelligent, often pack hunting. They are the alternate history forest carnivores. The herbivores of the alternate history forests include smaller hadrosaur descendants, the remnants of the ankylosaur lineage adapted to dense forest browsing, and various other dinosaur lineages we cannot easily predict. The forests are full of life, with a complete vertebrate fauna built entirely from dinosaur line ancestors. In the polar regions, the alternate history dinosaur faunas have continued to evolve into specialized cold climate forms. The polar tyrannosaurs are smaller and more compact than their tropical relatives, with thick insulating feathers and large fat reserves. The polar hadrosaurs are similarly adapted. The polar pterosaurs, where they exist, have evolved specialized cold climate feather coverings and behavioral adaptations. The marine fauna is dominated by the marine reptile lineages. The mosasaur descendants are the great open ocean predators. The plesiosaur descendants occupy various pursuit and ambush niches. The marine crocodiliforms, which had declined in the actual late Cretaceous and gone extinct in the middle Cretaceous in our timeline, may have continued in the alternate timeline, with new fully aquatic crocodile lineages emerging in the warmer alternate history seas. We're going to lower ourselves now briefly into the alternate history oceans. The terrestrial alternate world has occupied most of our walk, but the alternate oceans deserve their own quiet moment. They are in some ways even more strange and beautiful than the alternate land. We arrive in the open warm sea perhaps 200 miles off the alternate history coast of what would be California, in the alternate history equivalent of your modern present. The water is clear, deep, warm in the upper 100 feet. Sunlight ripples down through the surface in long, slow shafts. The visibility is excellent. A long shadow passes high above us. We look up. She is the alternate Cenozoic descendant of the great late Cretaceous mosasaur lineage. We will call her, for our walk together, Pacificosaurus. She is enormous. From the tip of her snout to the tip of her tail, she is perhaps 90 feet long. Her body is built like a streamlined torpedo, even more refined than her late Cretaceous mosasaurus ancestors. She is one of the largest predators that has ever existed on the planet, larger than any modern whale, larger even than the largest blue whales of your timeline. She is a marine reptile, not a marine mammal. She does not have the blowhole or the lungs of the modern whales we know. She is descended from the late Cretaceous mosasaurs that, in our timeline, went extinct at the KPG boundary, and that in the alternate timeline continue to evolve across the next 66 million years into the dominant large marine predators of the alternate oceans. Her body has converged on many features that whales have evolved in our timeline. She has dorsal flukes for stabilization. Her tail ends in a powerful vertical fluke for propulsion, more like a modern shark than a modern whale. Her body is counter-shaded, dark on top and light on the bottom, the same camouflage pattern that all large open ocean predators evolve. Her eyes are large, forward-facing for binocular depth perception. She breathes air through nostrils set high on her snout, surfacing every 15 to 20 minutes to breathe. She is one of perhaps several large mosasaur descendants in the alternate Pacific. Some lineages have evolved into pursuit predators like she is. Others have evolved into filter feeders, occupying the ecological niche that the great baleen whales fill in our timeline. We can imagine an alternate history filter-feeding mosasaur descendant we might call Crylosaurus, a 110-foot-long marine reptile with a wide, flexible mouth and an extraordinary baleen-like filtering apparatus, evolved independently from any reptilian or mammalian precedent, straining krill and small fish from the surface waters in long, slow, open-mouth gulps. Other mosasaur descendants have evolved into deep-diving squid hunters, the alternate history equivalent of the modern sperm whales of our timeline. They dive thousands of feet into the dark, cold, deeper ocean, hunting the giant squid and the colossal squid that, in this alternate timeline as in ours, occupy the deep abyssal habitats. We watch Pacificosaurus cruise. She moves slowly, conserving energy, scanning the surrounding water for opportunities. She's patrolling her territory, The plesiosaur descendants of the alternate ocean are also present. They have continued to evolve from the late Cretaceous plesiosaurs that survived alongside their pliosaur cousins. The plesiosaur lineage has, in the alternate timeline, developed in many different directions. We can imagine alternate plesiosaur descendants ranging from small, fast pelagic hunters perhaps 15 feet long, filling the dolphin niche of our timeline, to larger long-necked deep-diving forms perhaps 50 feet long, filling the squid hunting niche. A pod of small alternate history plesiosaur descendants is visible in the deeper water, perhaps 100 yards from us. There are perhaps 30 of them, moving in a coordinated school, their long necks flicking in unison as they snatch small fish from a passing school. They are the alternate history equivalent of dolphins, in their social behaviour, in their fast, graceful movement, in their hunting in coordinated groups. They are not dolphins. They are descendants of a completely separate marine reptile lineage. But evolution has produced convergent solutions to the same ecological problems. The ammonites are still here, the great coiled shell cephalopods that, in our timeline, went extinct at the KPG boundary, have continued to thrive in the alternate Cenozoic oceans. There are perhaps thousands of ammonite species across the alternate world, occupying ecological niches from shallow coastal lagoons to deep open ocean drift environments. They have, across the alternate 66 million years since the near miss, diversified into forms we cannot easily predict. Some may have evolved into giant ammonites, perhaps 10 feet in shell diameter, dominant grazers of the deep continental shelf sea floors. Others may have remained small and abundant, the basic prey species for many of the alternate marine predators. A drifting school of mid-sized ammonites passes us, perhaps 4 feet in shell diameter each, jet-propelled through the warm, sunlit water by the same siphon and mantle mechanism that the late Cretaceous ammonites used. They are alive and well in the alternate timeline. Their extinction never happened. The pterosaurs over the alternate ocean are still present. The pteranodon lineage of the late Cretaceous, which had been the dominant aerial fish-eating predators of the warm, shallow seas, has continued to evolve in the alternate Cenozoic. The descendants are perhaps larger and more diverse than the original pteranodon, with several species occupying different aerial fishing niches. We see a small group of them now, circling perhaps 100 feet above the water, dropping occasionally to snatch fish from the surface. The bony fish of the alternate ocean are also present in great diversity. The teleos lineage continues, just as it did in our timeline. There are perhaps not quite as many teleos species as in our timeline. Some niches that would have been filled by Cenozoic teleosts in our world may be filled by other lineages in the alternate world, but the bony fish are abundant and varied. The sharks are still present. The shark lineage was largely unaffected by the KPG extinction in our timeline, with many shark families surviving and continuing to diversify in the Cenozoic. In the alternate timeline, the sharks continue to coexist with the mosasaur descendants and the plesiosaur descendants, occupying their own ecological niches in the marine predator guild. Take a deep breath. The alternate ocean is in many ways even more biologically rich than your modern ocean. The alternate ocean has the modern marine mammal niches filled by mosasaur and plesiosaur descendants, plus a continuing diversity of late Cretaceous lineages that did not survive in our timeline. The alternate ocean has ammonites in their great cephalopod diversity, alongside the modern cephalopod lineages we know. The alternate ocean has pterosaurs in the air above it, alongside the bird lineages. The alternate ocean is, in some quiet sense, an ecologically maximalist version of what an Earth ocean can be. We watch Pacificosaurus continue her slow, patient patrol. The plesiosaur descendants continue their coordinated fishing. The ammonites continue their drifting through the warm water. The pterosaurs continue their aerial fishing flights. The whole alternate ocean continues its rich, complex life. We rise back to the surface. We lift away. The aerial fauna is shared between pterosaurs and birds. The largest aerial animals are giant pterosaur descendants, possibly larger even than Quetzalcoatlus, soaring on the warm thermals of the alternate history temperate skies. The smaller fast flyers are mostly birds, descendants of the late Cretaceous neornithes that survived in the alternate timeline alongside their pterosaur cousins. We continue forward. By the time we arrive at the alternate history equivalent of your modern present, the world is unrecognizably different from your real Earth and yet hauntingly familiar. The continents are arranged in nearly modern positions. The climate is broadly similar to your modern climate. The major plant communities, grasslands, forests, deserts, tundra, are present in roughly the same locations. But the animals are dinosaurs. Take a deep breath. Hold the moment lightly. The alternate history Earth, 66 million years after the near miss, is a world dominated by descendants of the late Cretaceous dinosaur fauna. The mammals are still small. The primates have never emerged. The humans do not exist. What does this alternate Earth look like in detail? We can walk through it slowly. On the alternate history African grasslands, where in your timeline the great herds of wildebeest and zebra and elephant move in seasonal migrations, the alternate herds are dinosaur-line. The ceratopsian descendant elephant analogues walk in slow processions across the savanna. The hadrosaur descendant antelope analogues gallop in vast migratory waves. The tyrannosaur descendant lion analogues hunt in cooperative pack groups. The pterosaur descendant vulture analogues circle overhead, scavenging the kills. In the alternate history Amazon basin, where in your timeline the dense tropical rainforest supports a remarkable diversity of mammals and birds, the alternate forest supports a remarkable diversity of dinosaur descendants. Small theropods of many sizes occupy the canopy and the forest floor. Mid-sized ornithopod descendants browse on the dense vegetation. Larger theropods hunt the herbivores. The trees themselves are mostly familiar to you. Angiosperms dominate as they do in your timeline, but the animals among them are completely different. In the alternate history Arctic, where in your timeline polar bears hunt seals on the sea ice and caribou migrate across the tundra, the alternate Arctic is patrolled by polar tyrannosaur descendants, adapted to the long polar winters with thick insulating feathers. They hunt polar hadrosaur descendants who migrate across the alternate history tundra in seasonal patterns. The marine mammals of your Arctic, the seals and walruses, do not exist. In their ecological place, mosasaur descendants hunt fish under the alternate history sea ice. In the alternate history oceans, where in your timeline the great whales sing across the basins, and the dolphins ride the bow waves of passing ships, although there are no ships in the alternate timeline, the alternate oceans are home to mosasaur descendants and plesiosaur descendants. The largest mosasaurs may approach blue whale size, although built differently. The plesiosaurs glide in long, graceful formations, hunting fish and squid in coordinated groups. The ammonites, surviving across the alternate Cenozoic, drift in their hundreds through the warmer parts of the alternate history seas. The mammals are everywhere in this alternate world, but they are everywhere small. The largest mammals are perhaps the size of small dogs, occupying ecological roles similar to modern raccoons or opossums. Most mammals are mouse-sized or rat-sized. They live in burrows, in tree hollows, in the leaf litter. They hunt insects, eat seeds and fruits, occasionally raid bird and pterosaur nests for eggs. They are the marginal small animals of the alternate Earth, just as their ancestors were the marginal small animals of the Mesozoic. There are no primates. The primate lineage in our timeline emerged from small Cretaceous surviving mammals that radiated into the empty Cenozoic forests in the wake of the dinosaur extinction. In the alternate timeline, with the dinosaurs still dominating the forests, the small mammals never have the ecological space to evolve into primates. The first primate-like lineages never emerge. The chimpanzees, the gorillas, the orangutans, our own ancestors, all of the great evolutionary chain of primate development simply does not happen. There are no humans. We do not exist in the alternate timeline. The lineage that produced us, the deep primate ancestors that radiated through the alternate forests, the early hominids that walked the alternate African plains, the Homo erectus and Homo sapiens lineages that emerged from those hominid ancestors, None of these happen. The alternate Earth, at its modern equivalent moment, is a world without humans. There are no cities. There are no farms. There are no roads. There are no books or paintings or symphonies. There is no agriculture, no writing, no science, no art, no civilization. The land is wild. The continents are wild. The oceans are wild. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of this settle, gently. The alternate Earth is, in some ways, hauntingly beautiful. The grasslands are vast and uninterrupted by fences or roads. The forests are pristine, having never been logged. The oceans are full of marine life that has never been hunted by industrial whalers. The atmosphere has never been transformed by burning of fossil fuels. The climate is whatever the slow natural processes of the alternate Cenozoic have produced, without any human contribution. It is a wild Earth. It is an Earth without us. It is an Earth where the dinosaurs continued their long, patient evolution for 66 million years longer than they did in our timeline, and where the small mammals never had their evolutionary moment in the sun. We walk slowly through this alternate world. We're going to walk forward to one more specific moment in the alternate timeline before we settle into the close. We're going to walk to the alternate history equivalent of the Pleistocene ice ages, which began in our timeline around 2.5 million years before the modern present. The Pleistocene ice ages were one of the great climatic transformations of the Cenozoic. As the slow global cooling that had been underway for tens of millions of years intensified, the polar ice caps grew, the Arctic ice cap thickened. The Antarctic ice cap, which had been forming for many millions of years, reached its maximum extent. And most dramatically, large continental ice sheets began to form on the northern continents of North America and Eurasia, growing during glacial periods and retreating during interglacial periods in a regular cyclical pattern driven by Milankovitch orbital cycles. The ice ages reshaped the terrestrial ecosystems of the northern hemisphere dramatically. New ecosystems emerged: the tundra, the boreal forest, the mammoth steppe. New animals evolved to occupy these ecosystems: the woolly mammoth, the woolly rhinoceros, the cave bear, the cave lion, the saber-toothed cat, the giant ground sloth, the modern human, whose lineage left Africa during the late Pleistocene and spread across the colder northern continents. In the alternate timeline, the same climatic transformations happen. The continents are in the same positions. The orbital cycles are the same. The cooling trend is the same. The ice ages still begin around the same time, but the animals responding to the ice ages are different. We arrive on the alternate history equivalent of the Eurasian mammoth steppe, around 20,000 years before the modern present, during a glacial maximum. The landscape is cold and dry. Snow lies on the ground in patches. The vegetation is sparse: short hardy grasses, dwarf willows, scattered low herbs adapted to the cold, dry conditions. The wind is constant. The sky is grey with thin, cold clouds. The animals here are descendants of dinosaur lineages that have adapted to the alternate history ice ages. Across the millions of years of the alternate Pleistocene equivalent, dinosaur lineages have evolved cold climate adaptations that converged in many ways with the cold climate adaptations of our timeline's mammals. The most dramatic of these are the woolly tyrannosaur descendants. The tyrannosaur lineage that had been the apex predator across the alternate Eocene, the alternate Miocene, and the alternate Pliocene equivalent has now evolved a fully feathered cold climate adaptation. The animal we are imagining is perhaps 30 feet long, weighing perhaps 5 tons, covered in long, shaggy, insulating feathers that give him a profile not unlike a fluffy giant chicken. His feathers are dark brown on top, lighter underneath, with white tips that help with camouflage against the patchy snow of the mammoth steppe. He hunts the woolly hadrosaur herds. The woolly hadrosaur is a hadrosaur descendant that has evolved through the alternate ice ages into a cold-adapted bulk grazer of the mammoth steppe. He's perhaps 25 feet long, weighing perhaps 4 tons. His body is covered in thick, insulating feathers, longer and shaggier than the feathers of his Cretaceous ancestors. His dental battery has evolved to handle the tough hardy grasses of the cold steppe. His digestive system has evolved to extract calories efficiently from the low-quality cold climate vegetation. A herd of these woolly hadrosaurs is moving slowly across the alternate mammoth steppe. There are perhaps 400 of them, walking in long lines toward a distant ridge where the snow cover is thinner and the grazing is better. They walk slowly, their thick feathered bodies casting long shadows on the snow. They're calm, patient, conserving energy through the cold day. They will graze when the sun is highest and the wind is least, and they will move again when the wind picks up in the afternoon. The alternate history mammoth steppe also has its own ceratopsian descendants. The cold-adapted ceratopsians are massive, perhaps the largest land animals of the alternate Pleistocene equivalent. They are heavily feathered, with reduced frills and enlarged nasal horns. They occupy a niche similar to the actual woolly mammoth of our timeline. Bulk grazers of the cold steppe, slow-moving, well-defended against predators, capable of digging through snow to reach the buried grass. A small group of these alternate history woolly ceratopsians is visible in the middle distance, perhaps 8 animals walking slowly across a patch of patchy snow. The matriarch leads the group. The juveniles are tucked between the adults. They are calm, well adapted to their cold environment, the apex herbivores of their ecosystem. The cold-adapted dromaeosaur descendants are also present. They are smaller than the great woolly tyrannosaur, perhaps the size of large modern wolves. They hunt in packs of perhaps a dozen animals. They are feathered, intelligent, fast. They are the alternate history equivalent of the dire wolf, or perhaps of the cave lion, or perhaps of something in between. They hunt the smaller herbivores of the cold steppe and the juveniles of the larger herbivores when they can isolate them from the protective herd. We watch the alternate mammoth steppe for a long quiet moment. The woolly hadrosaur herd continues its slow patient walk. The woolly ceratopsians continue their grazing. The woolly tyrannosaur is somewhere in the distance, perhaps resting between hunts. The cold wind moves across the steppe. The sky is grey. The patches of snow gleam pale in the dim winter light. This is the alternate Earth at the equivalent of the Pleistocene ice ages. The cold climate ecosystems are populated by cold-adapted dinosaur descendants, rather than by the cold-adapted mammals of our timeline. The convergent evolution has produced animals that fill the same ecological roles as the actual mammoth steppe fauna, but built from different starting materials. In our timeline, the late Pleistocene mammoth steppe was eventually populated by humans. The first modern humans left Africa around 50 to 70,000 years before our modern present and spread across Eurasia. By the time of the glacial maximum we are visiting in the alternate timeline, humans had spread across most of Eurasia, were living through the ice ages as nomadic hunter-gatherers, and were beginning to influence the megafauna they hunted. The actual mammoth steppe fauna was, at this point in our timeline, sharing its ecosystem with modern humans. In the alternate timeline, there are no humans. The mammoth steppe, in its alternate history equivalent form, supports a complete ecosystem of cold-adapted dinosaur descendants, but no primates, no hominids, no humans. The cold steppe is wild, unwitnessed, alive only in the slow patient rhythms of its dinosaur inhabitants. We watch the alternate mammoth steppe for a long quiet moment. We are honouring, in your imagination, a world that does not exist but that might have existed. The woolly tyrannosaur descendants, the woolly hadrosaurs, the woolly ceratopsians, the cold-adapted dromaeosaur packs, the cold-adapted small theropods hunting cold-adapted small insects in the dwarf willow thickets. We continue forward in time, slowly. The alternate ice ages will continue in cycles, just as the actual ice ages continued in our timeline. The glacial periods will alternate with interglacial periods. The cold-adapted dinosaur faunas will expand and contract in response. The mammoth steppe ecosystem will breathe in the long, slow rhythms of orbital climate cycles. Eventually, in the alternate timeline, as in our timeline, the last glacial period will end. The climate will warm, The ice sheets will retreat. The mammoth steppe will give way to the modern temperate forests and grasslands we have already walked through in the alternate history modern equivalent. The cold-adapted dinosaur faunas will not, in the alternate timeline, go extinct as the cold-adapted mammoth steppe fauna did in our timeline. The actual mammoth steppe extinctions in our timeline were partly driven by human hunting pressure. In the alternate timeline with no humans, the cold-adapted dinosaur faunas will retreat to higher latitudes as the climate warms, but they will not go extinct. They will continue in slightly modified forms as the cold climate specialists of the alternate history modern Arctic. We continue forward. We stand on a hillside in what would have been East Africa, watching the alternate history grasslands stretch toward the horizon. A herd of hadrosaur descendant antelope analogues is moving slowly across the plain, perhaps 2,000 animals, walking in long lines toward a distant watering hole. The morning sun is bright. The grass is rippling in the warm breeze. In the distance, several pterosaur descendant scavengers are circling on the rising thermals. Closer in, a small group of tyrannosaur descendant predators is resting in the shade of a single tall acacia tree, watching the herd, conserving energy for the next hunt. This could have been Earth. This is, in some quiet sense, what Earth was supposed to be. We move slowly across the alternate world. We walk through the alternate history Amazon forest, where strange feathered theropods slip between the trees in the dappled green light. We walk through the alternate history North American grasslands, where great ceratopsian descendant elephant analogues move in slow processions toward distant rivers. We walk along the alternate history coast of California, where pterosaur descendant fishing predators circle low over the warm shallow sea, and mosasaur descendant pursuit hunters patrol the deeper offshore waters. Everywhere we go, the alternate world is wild. It is alive. It is full of evolutionary creativity that we have never seen in our timeline, but it is also empty. There are no humans. There are no minds capable of understanding what they are seeing. There are no scientists to study the alternate dinosaur faunas, no naturalists to catalogue the alternate species, no philosophers to wonder about the alternate evolutionary trajectories. The alternate Earth is alive but unwitnessed. Take a deep breath. Hold this. It is, in some quiet sense, the heart of the thought experiment we are walking through tonight. We exist because the asteroid hit. We are here, in our own timeline, with our own modern world, our own civilization, our own minds capable of wondering about alternate timelines, because 66 million years ago, an asteroid did not miss by 1,000,000 miles. It struck. The dinosaurs ended. The mammals inherited the empty world. The primates emerged. Our species evolved. The world we know was made possible by the catastrophe we're imagining away. This is not a sad thought. It is not a triumphant thought. It is simply a quiet thought. We exist because of a contingent event in deep time. Our entire civilization, our entire species, our entire individual lives are downstream of a single asteroid impact that we did not cause and could not have prevented. We are the children of an extinction event. In the alternate timeline, the dinosaurs are still here. The mosasaurs are still patrolling the oceans. The pterosaurs are still gliding overhead. The mammals are still small and hidden, hunting beetles in the leaf litter, completely unaware of the alternate timeline in which they would have inherited the Earth. In our timeline, the dinosaurs are gone, the mosasaurs are gone, the pterosaurs are gone, the ammonites are gone. 3/4 of all species that lived in the late Cretaceous are gone. And we are here, walking through our own modern world, looking back across 66 million years of mammalian evolution at the moment that made it all possible. We are going to step away from the alternate world now and return slowly to our own timeline. We are going to step back from the alternate Earth for a quiet meditation before we settle into the close. We are going to honour, gently, the mammalian potential that is never realised in the alternate timeline. We are going to honour the primates that never emerge, the humans that never evolve, the civilizations that never form. This is perhaps the most strange and humbling thought of the whole walk. In our timeline, the post-Cretaceous mammalian radiation was one of the great evolutionary explosions in the history of life on Earth. The small Cretaceous surviving mammals, freed from the dinosaur dominance by the KPG extinction, radiated across the empty Cenozoic ecosystems with extraordinary speed. Within 10 million years of the asteroid impact, mammals had diversified into all of the major ecological roles that dinosaurs had previously occupied. By 20 million years after the impact, mammals were the dominant terrestrial vertebrates on every continent. The radiation included many lineages that we now take for granted as part of the modern world. The ungulates, horses, deer, antelopes, cattle, pigs, hippopotamuses, giraffes. The carnivores, cats, dogs, bears, weasels, mongooses, hyenas. The cetaceans, whales, dolphins, porpoises. The rodents, mice, rats, squirrels, beavers. The bats, the only mammals to evolve true powered flight. The xenarthrans, sloths, anteaters, armadillos. The marsupials, kangaroos, koalas, opossums, wombats. The proboscidians, elephants, mammoths, mastodons. The primates. The primates are the lineage that produced us. They emerged in the warmer tropical forests of the early Cenozoic, perhaps around 55 million years before our modern present. The earliest primates were small, tree-dwelling, with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes for depth perception. They were adapted for life in the canopy, eating fruits and insects, leaping from branch to branch. They were one lineage among many in the early Cenozoic mammalian radiation, not obviously more important than any of the others at the time. But across the next 55 million years, the primate lineage diversified spectacularly. The tarsiers split off early. The lemurs and lorisses split off next, eventually finding refuge in Madagascar where they continue to thrive today. The monkeys diversified into the New World monkeys of the Americas and the Old World monkeys of Africa and Asia. The apes emerged within the Old World monkey radiation and produced the gibbons, the orangutans, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the bonobos, and one specific lineage of African apes, around 7 million years before our modern present, began to walk upright and to develop the larger brains that would eventually produce the genus Homo. The genus Homo, our genus, emerged in Africa around 2.5 million years before the modern present. The earliest Homo species, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, developed stone tools, controlled fire, hunted larger prey than their ape ancestors. They spread across Africa, then out of Africa into Eurasia. Multiple Homo species coexisted at various points in the Pleistocene. Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo denisova, eventually Homo sapiens. By around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had become the only surviving Homo species and had spread across nearly the entire planet. The development of agriculture, around 12,000 years before our present, transformed human societies dramatically. The first cities rose, the first writing systems were invented, the first formal religions developed, the first mathematics, the first astronomy, the first systematic philosophy. Across the next 10,000 years, human civilization built and rebuilt itself many times, eventually producing the modern world of your own century, with its sciences and its technologies and its global communication networks. All of this happened in our timeline. The mammalian radiation, the primate emergence, the Homo lineage, the development of civilization, the slow, patient build-up across 66 million years from small Cretaceous surviving mammals to modern humans listening to long-form sleep podcasts about deep time. In the alternate timeline, none of this happens. Take a deep breath. Hold the weight of this carefully. The small mammals of the alternate history Cretaceous survive the near miss alongside everyone else. The Cretaceous continues. The mammals remain small. They never have the ecological space to radiate into the large body niches. They never develop into the modern mammal lineages we know. There are no horses, there are no elephants, there are no whales. There are no bears, there are no big cats, there are no kangaroos, there are no rodents larger than the largest Cretaceous mammals, There are no mammals of any kind larger than perhaps a small dog. The whole mammalian radiation simply does not happen. The primates never emerge. The small tropical mammals that, in our timeline, took to the canopy and evolved grasping hands and forward-facing eyes, in the alternate timeline never have the ecological space. The canopy is full of small feathered theropods and tree-living dromaeosaur descendants, occupying the niches that primates filled in our timeline. The small mammals remain on the forest floor, in the leaf litter, in the burrows, in the small marginal niches they have occupied since the early Mesozoic. The genus Homo never emerges. There is no African ape lineage to give rise to upright walking and tool use and larger brains. There is no Homo habilis, no Homo erectus, no Homo neanderthalensis, no Homo sapiens. There are no humans. There are no human cultures. There are no human languages. There are no human arts. There are no human sciences. There are no human philosophies. There are no human civilizations. Everything that you know to be characteristic of the modern world, the cities and the agriculture and the writing and the music and the books and the films and the conversations and the sciences and the philosophies and the religions, all of it, does not exist in the alternate timeline. The alternate Earth has none of it. The alternate Earth is, in this specific sense, completely empty of mind in the form that human minds take. We are going to step back, briefly, to honour the slow, patient changes in the alternate Earth that are not about the dinosaurs at all. The continents continue to drift in the alternate timeline. The mountains continue to rise and erode. The oceans continue to open and close. The climate continues to shift in long, slow patterns. All of this happens regardless of which animals are walking the alternate continents. Across the alternate Cenozoic, the continents drift toward their modern positions, just as they did in our timeline. The Atlantic Ocean continues to widen. India continues her northward journey and eventually collides with Asia, beginning the slow uplift of the alternate Himalayas. Australia separates from Antarctica and drifts northward. Antarctica drifts south and becomes increasingly isolated, eventually cooling enough to develop ice sheets. The mountain ranges of your modern world all form in the alternate timeline as well. The Andes rise along the western coast of alternate history South America. The Rocky Mountains continue to uplift in alternate history North America. The Alps form in alternate history Europe. The Himalayas rise in alternate history Asia. The whole pattern of modern global topography emerges in the alternate timeline through the same slow tectonic processes that produced it in ours. The climate continues to cool through the alternate Cenozoic, just as it did in ours. The early greenhouse warmth gives way slowly to the cooler middle Cenozoic. The cooling intensifies through the alternate Miocene equivalent. The Pliocene equivalent sees the development of substantial polar ice caps. The Pleistocene equivalent sees the development of full ice ages with continental glaciation cycles. These slow, patient planetary processes are largely independent of which animals are dominating the terrestrial ecosystems. The plate tectonics do not care whether the herbivores are mammals or dinosaurs. The orbital cycles that drive the ice ages do not depend on whether the apex predators are tyrannosaur descendants or saber-toothed cats. The slow climate cooling that has characterized the actual Cenozoic for tens of millions of years would have happened regardless. What is different in the alternate timeline is the biological response to all of these planetary changes. The animals adapting to the alternate cooling climate are dinosaur descendants instead of evolving mammals. The animals colonizing the alternate Australia, after its separation from Antarctica, are not marsupial mammals, as they were in our timeline, producing the unique Australian marsupial fauna, but rather the alternate history dinosaur lineages that happened to be on the Australian landmass when it began its long isolation. The Australian alternate fauna would, across the alternate Cenozoic, evolve into something completely distinct from any continental dinosaur fauna elsewhere. An island evolution radiation perhaps comparable in strangeness to the actual Australian marsupial radiation. We can imagine the alternate Australia briefly. Across 40 million years of isolation since separating from Antarctica, the Australian continent has developed a dinosaur fauna distinct from any other continent. Some lineages have become specialized for the dry interior, with extraordinarily efficient water conservation adaptations. Others have specialized for the wet tropical north. Smaller dinosaurs have radiated into many ecological niches, including some that are perhaps unique to the alternate Australia. Small flightless feathered theropods that fill the role of the actual Australian flightless birds, or strange long-legged ornithopod descendants that fill the role of the actual Australian kangaroos. The alternate Australia is, in some quiet sense, the most strange and distinctive part of the alternate Earth. We can only sketch what its fauna might look like. The specific evolutionary outcomes are unknowable. But we can be confident that the alternate Australia would have its own unique dinosaur lineages, isolated for tens of millions of years from the other continents, evolving into forms that would astonish any visitor from a more typical continental fauna. Take a deep breath. The planet itself, in its slow, patient processes of continental drift and mountain building and climate cycling, is largely the same in both timelines. The actors on the planet's stage are different, but the stage itself is largely shared. We move forward, gently, back toward the close. There may be other minds of a sort. Some of the alternate history dinosaur descendants are intelligent. The dromaeosaur lineage in our timeline was relatively brainy by dinosaur standards. In the alternate timeline, freed from the KPG extinction, the dromaeosaur lineage might have continued to evolve toward higher intelligence. There are speculative scientific essays about the possibility of dinosaur-derived intelligent species, the famous Dinosauroid thought experiment of the paleontologist Dale Russell. We do not know whether dinosaur lineages would have evolved into anything like a human-level intelligent species in the alternate timeline. The honest answer is probably not. The contingencies of evolution that produced human-level intelligence in our timeline were many, specific and deeply unlikely. The alternate history dinosaur lineages would, in all probability, never have evolved a species capable of mathematics, writing, abstract reasoning, complex symbolic communication, or any of the other distinctive capacities that define the human cognitive niche. The alternate Earth is, in all probability, a world without complex mind. Hold the moment lightly. Let your breath slow. We exist because the alternate timeline is not our timeline. We are here, walking through deep time tonight, capable of imagining alternate worlds, capable of feeling something like awe at the strangeness of contingent evolution, capable of conversing with each other about deep philosophical questions, because the asteroid hit in our timeline, the Mesozoic ended, the mammals inherited, the primates emerged, we exist. The alternate dinosaurs continue in our imagination on their wild empty Earth. They are real in the soft theatre of your closed eyes. They are alive and patient and beautiful and unwitnessed. But the witnesses are us, the minds that can hold the alternate timeline in imagination, that can wonder about what might have been, that can write and read and listen to long-form podcasts about it, exist only in our timeline. The alternate timeline contains no witnesses to its own existence. It is, in some quiet sense, both more and less than ours. We are going to return now to our own timeline slowly for the close. The alternate dinosaurs continue in your imagination on their alternate Earth. The hadrosaur descendant herds continue their slow migrations. The tyrannosaur descendant predators continue their patient hunting. The mosasaur descendant whales that never were continue their alternate ocean patrols. The pterosaur descendant sky giants continue their slow soaring flights. They live in your imagination, the rich and complex lives they would have lived if the asteroid had missed. But the asteroid did not miss. In our timeline, it struck. The alternate world we have walked through tonight is imagination, not history. We are going to take a long, quiet pause before we settle into the final close. We are going to honour the strangeness of the thought experiment we have walked through tonight. The alternate Earth is, in the most literal sense, impossible. There is only one timeline, our timeline. The asteroid struck, the dinosaurs ended, the mammals inherited, we exist. The alternate world we have walked through tonight is imagination. It is, in physics terms, a counterfactual without any reality. It exists only in the soft theatre of your closed eyes, only in the patient act of thinking through what might have been. And yet, the act of imagining it is meaningful. It tells us something true about our actual world. What does the alternate timeline teach us? It teaches us that our existence is contingent. We are not the inevitable peak of evolution. We are not the obvious endpoint that vertebrate development was always going to reach. We are instead one specific outcome among many possible ones, made possible by a specific contingent event in deep time. If the asteroid had missed, we would not exist. The whole structure of human civilization, human consciousness, human meaning, exists because of an accident. It teaches us that evolution is creative. The alternate Earth would have produced dinosaur descendants we cannot fully imagine, occupying ecological niches we know from our timeline but built from completely different starting materials. The convergent solutions to ecological problems are remarkable. Similar ecological roles produced by similar selection pressures from entirely different lineages. Evolution is, in some quiet sense, a vast experiment in possibility, and the actual outcomes we know are only one set of the many that could have unfolded. It teaches us that mind is rare. The alternate Earth, 66 million years after the near miss, is in all probability a world without complex mind. The dinosaur lineages, despite their long evolutionary success, would not have, in all likelihood, produced a species capable of language and abstract reasoning and symbolic culture. The capacity for complex mind is a specific evolutionary outcome of the primate lineage, an outcome that itself depended on many specific contingencies, an outcome that was never inevitable. It teaches us that the universe is large and the timeline is long. The 66 million years between the asteroid impact and our modern present is more time than any human can really grasp. The slow, patient processes of evolution, climate change, continental drift, all happened across time frames that dwarf any individual life or civilization. Our perspective on deep time is, at best, a fragmentary glimpse from inside a very brief moment of conscious existence. It teaches us, perhaps most importantly, to be grateful. Grateful for the fact that we exist at all. Grateful for the long chain of contingencies that produced us. Grateful for the moment of conscious experience that allows us to wonder about alternate timelines, to imagine worlds that never were, to listen to long-form sleep documentaries about deep time on quiet evenings in our own rooms. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of this settle, gently. We have walked tonight through a world that does not exist. We have honoured its inhabitants who do not exist. We have imagined their lives, their migrations, their hunts, their family groups, their slow patient evolution across an alternate 66 million years. They have been alive, in some quiet sense, in the soft theatre of your closed eyes for the past few hours. They are not real. The dinosaurs ended 66 million years ago in our timeline. The asteroid struck. The Mesozoic ended. There is no alternate timeline in which they continued. The walk we have taken tonight is imagination only. But the imagination is real. The capacity to imagine, to wonder, to think through alternate possibilities is part of what makes us human. The Cretaceous surviving mammals that became our ancestors developed, across 66 million years, the capacity for symbolic thought that allows us to do this. We can imagine worlds that never existed. We can hold them in our minds. We can honour them in our own quiet way, even though they are not real. This is one of the strange, beautiful capacities of being a human mind. We can witness possibilities that have no existence outside our witnessing. We can give a kind of half-existence to alternate timelines, to historical might-have-beens, to the rich, detailed dinosaur descendants who never walked any real Earth. We can love them, in some sense, even though they are not there to be loved. The alternate dinosaurs continue in our imagination, on their wild, empty, alternate Earth. The Savannaceratops family is still walking toward the river in the alternate East African morning. The Camposaurus herd is still migrating across the alternate Eurasian grassland. The woolly tyrannosaur descendants are still hunting in the alternate mammoth steppe. The Pacificosaurus is still patrolling the alternate Pacific. The pterosaur giants are still circling on the alternate warm thermals. The mammals are still small, still hidden, still hunting beetles in the alternate leaf litter. They will be there, in your imagination, whenever you wish to return to them. The alternate Earth is paused in your memory. It is, in some quiet way, not entirely impossible. But it is not real. The real Earth is the one we live on. The real timeline is the one in which we exist. The real history, with all its accidents and contingencies, is the one that brought us to this moment, in this room, listening to this story. The asteroid struck, the dinosaurs ended, the mammals inherited. We exist. This is our story. This is the timeline we're in. This is the world we live in. We are, all of us, the children of an extinction event. We are the survivors' descendants. We are the inheritors of an empty Earth. And we are here. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of this settle, slowly. In our timeline, the small mammals living in the shadow of the great Cretaceous dinosaurs survived the impact winter, came through the long bottleneck, and began the slow, patient radiation that produced our modern world. Across the next 66 million years, those small mammals diversified into the great Cenozoic radiation. The ungulates appeared, the carnivores diversified, the cetaceans returned to the seas, the bats took to the air, the primates emerged in the warm tropical forests, the first hominids walked the African plains, Homo erectus appeared, Homo sapiens appeared, the first agriculture began in the river valleys, the first cities rose, the first writing was invented. The first scientific revolutions happened. The first long-form sleep podcasts about deep time were recorded. Everything that you know, everything that you are, everything that is meaningful to you exists because of the long, patient 66 million year mammalian inheritance that began with the asteroid impact at the end of the Cretaceous. This is a thought to hold with care. We have walked tonight through an alternate world that does not exist. We have imagined gently what might have been. We have honoured the dinosaur lineages that, in another timeline, might have continued for another 66 million years. We have honoured the mammal lineages that, in our timeline, did inherit the world and did eventually produce us. The thought experiment is valuable not because the alternate timeline is real, but because it reminds us how contingent our existence is. We are not the inevitable outcome of evolution. We are not the inevitable peak of vertebrate development. We are instead one specific evolutionary outcome among many possible ones, made possible by a specific set of contingent events in deep time. The asteroid hit, the dinosaurs ended, the mammals inherited, the primates emerged, we exist. In another timeline, none of this happened. The dinosaurs continued, the mammals remained small, the primates never emerged, we do not exist. Take a deep breath. Let the weight of this settle slowly. We are here. We exist. We are conscious. We can think about alternate timelines, can wonder about what might have been, can imagine the dinosaur descendants who might have walked an alternate Earth. We have walked with them tonight in our imagination. They have, in some sense, been alive for the past few hours in the soft theatre of your closed eyes. They will be there in your imagination whenever you wish to return to them. The alternate Earth is paused in your memory. It is, in some quiet way, not entirely impossible, but it is not real. The real Earth is the one we live on. The real timeline is the one in which the asteroid struck and the dinosaurs ended and the mammals inherited. The real history, with all its contingencies and accidents and slow patient developments, is what brought us to this moment, in this room, listening to this story. Let your breath slow. Let your body settle deeper into whatever supports you. Let the small last edges of your day go. we're going to step away from the alternate timeline slowly. We're going to drift gently back across 66 million years of imagined deep time. We're going to return slowly to your own modern room, your own modern bed, your own modern night. The alternate dinosaurs continue somewhere in your imagination. The hadrosaur herds continue their migrations. The tyrannosaur descendants continue their patient hunting. The mosasaur descendants continue their alternate ocean patrols. The mammals remain small and hidden. The world they live in is wild and beautiful and complete, although unwitnessed. They will be there whenever you wish to return. For tonight, though, we have walked enough. The alternate Earth is still alive in your imagination. The dinosaurs are still walking. The asteroid is still passing harmlessly through the dark space beyond the Earth. The Cretaceous never ended in that timeline. The Mesozoic continued in that timeline. The mammals never had their moment. But in our timeline here in this real room the asteroid struck, the Mesozoic ended. The mammals inherited the world, and we exist because of all of it. We are the children of an accident. We are the descendants of small, careful animals who happened to survive a catastrophe that ended almost everyone else. We are the lineage that, given an empty Cenozoic world to inherit, slowly diversified into all the mammal forms we know, eventually producing the primates, eventually producing us. There is something deeply humbling about this. We did not earn our place at the top of the modern terrestrial food chain through any specific evolutionary achievement of our ancestors. We did not arrive at human-level consciousness through any inevitable upward trajectory of vertebrate evolution. We arrived here because of a contingent astronomical event 66 million years before our birth. This is not a sad thought, even though it might at first sound sad. It is instead a thought that puts our existence in proper perspective. We are not the inevitable purpose of evolution. We are not the destined end of all the cosmic processes that led to us. We are simply a specific evolutionary outcome that happened because of a specific accident in deep time, and given that, we are also a kind of gift. We are the small Cretaceous mammals' great-great-great-grandchildren, holding in our minds the entire long sweep of deep time, capable of imagining alternate timelines that never happened, capable of feeling awe at the strangeness of contingent existence. We can love the alternate dinosaurs that never were. We can grieve the lineages that did not survive the asteroid in our timeline. We can wonder at the patient, slow processes of evolution that produced us, and at the brief moment of conscious existence that allows us to wonder at all. This is what it means, perhaps, to be human. To be capable of holding worlds that do not exist in the soft theatre of imagination, to be capable of honouring the lineages that came before us, and the lineages that, in alternate timelines, would have replaced us, to be capable of sitting in a quiet room at the end of a long day, listening to a slow voice walk through alternate deep time, and feeling something like peace at the strangeness and contingency of our actual existence. The alternate world is, in some quiet sense, alive in your imagination. The dinosaurs are walking, the mosasaurs are swimming, the pterosaurs are gliding, the mammals are hidden, the continents are drifting. The slow patient processes of an alternate 66 million years are unfolding in some imaginary parallel. But our world is alive in this room, right now, in this moment. The breath in your chest, the weight of your body in your bed, the soft sounds of your night, the slow, patient processes of your own life, your own consciousness, your own brief moment of existence in the long unfolding of cosmic time. Both are real in their different ways, the alternate dinosaurs in their imaginative existence, we in our real existence. Let your breath slow. Let the small last edges of your day go. Let the alternate timeline rest, quietly, in the back of your mind, while you settle into the actual moment of your actual life. The walk we have taken tonight is over. The alternate world we have honoured continues to exist, in some quiet sense, in the soft theatre of imagination, but it does not require your further attention. It will be there whenever you wish to return to it. The dinosaur descendants will continue their walks. The mammal lineage will remain small and hidden. The continents will continue their slow drift. The alternate Earth will continue patiently in your memory. For tonight, though, you have done enough. You have walked through deep time. You have imagined what might have been. You have honored the contingent strangeness of your own existence. That is enough. The night is patient. The morning will come. Sleep well tonight, traveler. Good night.